My name is Rhys Griffiths, and I am Deer Industry New Zealand's Market Manager for Asia. And I need to work out the technology. You need to push it to the back. Right, to stay ahead of the game. To stay ahead of the game in the velvet industry, we must first understand where we have come from, where are we now, and where do we want to go. What is our goal and how do we get there? Now, to help with the velvet session, John Taken, my workmate from the MVSB, will come up and go through some of the regulatory changes. There'll be an exporter panel with Ross Chambers from Provalco Cooperative Limited, Tony Cochran from PGG Wrights, and Hugh Signal from Alpine Deer, who will come up onto the stage and join myself and John Taken. And actually Ian Scott, Chairman of NVSB, will also come up here to answer questions as well relating to the regulatory control scheme. But you have me to start with. So I'll be starting with a bit of a scene setter. And the theme of my presentation is staying ahead of the game, the new story of New Zealand velvet. So staying ahead of the velvet game are broken up into 4 sections, or 4 chapters. Chapter 1, running out of puff. Chapter 2, catching the pack. Chapter 3, changing the game. And Chapter 4, staying ahead of the game. So the first chapter, running out of puff. The theme here is stuck in a commodity cycle, and I guess we've talked a little bit about that this morning as well, some of those great presentations. And the velvet industry was definitely in this way for the first sort of 30 years of its existence. So New Zealand, as many of you guys know, entered the Korean market about 30-odd years ago, 40-odd years ago as a value option. So we're cheaper than the competing alternatives out there from China, Russia, Kazakhstan, and North America. We were largely an undifferentiated commodity selling through an opaque channel full of adulteration and misrepresentation. There was really a lack of product stewardship, and what I mean from that is that by the time our precious New Zealand velvet arrived on the shores into Korea, it really lacked its identity. So we didn't really care, we didn't really understand what happened beyond the farm gate, and we felt really powerless to do anything about it. And the result wasn't pretty, and I know I've put this up with quite a few of my presentations previously, but this is a powerful slide because it shows how the industry was performing up until about 2008, 2009. So the blue line there is the average farm gate price, and you can see it was extremely volatile in the velvet industry. The yellow bar graph is the production, and the red line is the linear line for price and returns. So overall, we weren't ahead of the game. We were actually struggling to keep up, and the velvet industry was heading for a really bad way. Chapter 2, catching the pack. And the theme here is Lord of the Rings. And I say that because Lord of the Rings really started, particularly in South Korea, started to establish a bit of a story around the clean, green, wide open spaces type of image that New Zealand had. And it sort of put us really on the map. And it really resonated well with the younger Oriental medicine doctors. Companies like OmniHerb, for example, and apologies for that photo there, you may not be able to see it that clearly, but on the side of the packaging there shows lovely shots of the Central Otago region. Oriental medicine doctor companies started using the New Zealandness in their promotion to Oriental medicine doctors. So it got us one step further down that value chain. So no longer with the companies like OmniHerb, no longer were we an undifferentiated commodity. We're starting to get that sort of value recognition down one step further into those Oriental medicine doctors. And to the shock and horror of some of the traders up in the market, New Zealand velvet price started to increase relative to our competitors. However, velvet was still going through that traditional Oriental medicine sector. So at least 85-90% of New Zealand's production was going through that Oriental medicine sector. And there was a lack of identity. So although some of the Korean Oriental medicine doctors started to understand about the brand attributes of New Zealand velvet, there was a real lack of identity by their patients or by consumers in the marketplace. because it went through some of the, it still was going through some of that Oriental medicine market area in Jagadong and Seoul and what have you, it was still open to that sort of commingling and the kind of cheats and fiddles that may happen as well. And separately, the Oriental medicine sector was and still is under significant pressure from consumers, modern consumers turning towards more modern and sophisticated products like healthy food type products and also more to Western medicine. So that whole segment was really starting to tail off. Chapter 3, and we get into the nuts and bolts of my presentation today, changing the game. And the theme here is around innovation and strategic partnerships. I'm a firm believer that the best opportunities can come from observing the successes of comparable industries. And in this case, we studied the ginseng industry. So I was told about 8 to 10 years ago that the ginseng industry, many, many years ago, about 50 odd years ago, was of a similar size to the velvet industry in terms of consumption. However, at that point, ginseng had risen to at least 100 to 1 in terms of the disparity between ginseng consumption and velvet consumption. So we wanted to ask the question, why? What was happening? And we were told that they had moved from their Oriental medicine controlled channel into more healthy food, the more healthy food type channel. So what do? We decided to go and approach the world's largest ginseng value-added marketer, Korean Ginseng Corp, KGC. Many of you guys have heard us talk about that previously, and we thought, well, we'll go up and speak to these guys about how we can kind of move out of this sector. It did take some time to develop a plan or a pitch and a bit of investment of your levy money. And we came up with this as an idea at a meeting that we had with them in Seoul about 8 years ago or 10 years ago. And it was around a story of discovery. So although the ginseng industry had really flourished, it was actually starting to reach a maturity. So there were many competitors out there. It was quite a saturated market, and it was, there wasn't a lot of room for growth. So our timing was really right when we managed to get up there and meet with the KGC guys. And we were able to sort of talk about this new ingredient and almost this discovery that they came to New Zealand to discover this country that was beautiful and unpolluted. And lo and behold, New Zealand are the world's best dairy farmers and provide this product called Nogyong, this velvet product. And they really put in quite a heavy investment. So we will always be eternally grateful to KGC for their innovative attitude, spending millions of dollars in product development and research. And today, KGC is now the world's largest value-added velvet marketer. Some of you guys that were up at the Napier conference in 2015 may have remembered Korean Ginseng Corp's director for R&D, Dr. Chung. And he was really excited about KGC's 19th velvet product. So it's important to understand, I guess, so from 2008, 2009 to about 2015, KGC had launched about 17 or 18. They had one product in 2008, a kid tonic. But over that time, they'd actually launched a whole lot of other velvet-type products. And they were, they had varying degrees of success. Most of them were quite successful in their own right. But Dr. Chung was particularly excited about this new product called Chongnoksam. Chongnoksam is the middle product there. It's a paste, a thick paste. Some of you guys may have tried it. It retails for about $450 per 30-day dose, and the executive keeps it on their desk and has a wee little sample of it, a wee little teaspoon of it, sort of getting toward later part of the afternoon, just to help with anti-fatigue and what have you. That launch was so successful that the line extended it and had other Chongnok brands. So the green package there is a Chongnok Tong, and the other little package there is Chongnok Every Time. So these all contain 2 grams of New Zealand velvet, so a pretty heavy-hitting dose of New Zealand velvet. And what was so awesome is it's really retailed or directed toward that premium position, which we want to be absolutely a part of. Last month, KGC announced that the retail sales of the Chongnok brand reached 130 million New Zealand dollars in sales. That's 130 million New Zealand bucks that wasn't there 3 years ago, in a completely new channel that's only really been opening up over the past few years. So what's next? This is a new, you'll notice, it's in the Chongnok livery, so it does contain a bit of velvet, but they've just launched a brand new tail product on the market. So there are other opportunities by partnering with these large, sophisticated companies. So KGC has been a real success, and we really do thank them for their friendship and their partnership in this journey into the healthy food sector. But one of the other things that has also happened is we've had many of these other companies now come through and almost copy or on the back of the success of KGC launching their own products. And they're not small companies. So this is a product called Changyun Jin, which is produced by a company called LG, so Life's Good. Many of you guys will recognize the brand. They launched this product in Chuseok last year, so around that sort of September, October time, and reported significant success. What is super cool is, I know Dan showed this photo before, but you've got the New Zealandness again on their packaging as they really promote Velvet, which is just great for us in terms of building up that sub-brand that Dan alluded to earlier. Now, flashing across the screen at the moment is 23 food products that have been launched since October of last year by different companies. So this has really gained the healthy food drive, and with Velvet has really gained a huge momentum. Most of these contain New Zealand Velvet. The product shot at the top is a Japanese company called Yakult, which is a probiotic type company, and they're starting to invest in Velvet products in South Korea as well. So the story's getting out there, and this channel is really opening up for us, which is brilliant. And it'll be good if I can change slide. There we go. So why are these strategic partnerships good for us as an industry? Well, it gives us that connection of our brand, of our sub-brand of New Zealand Velvet. It really sort of ties us in with these companies. The Intel Inside thing that Dan alluded to before, and you can see, so that LG product that I just showed you, showing New Zealand Velvet on the side of every one of their packaging. This is a KGC TVC ad that really worked very well over in Korea, showing the New Zealand Velvet logo. But ultimately, it gives effective communication on Velvet and the New Zealandness of and the New Zealand Velvet story out to their consumers. We don't know their consumers nearly to the same degree that they know their consumers. So it gives that effective communication. They're also really good custodians of our Velvet. So before, when I talked about product stewardship, these guys are turning our Velvet into a really high-end premium position product. And it gives and it provides energy and credibility in the sector. Why are strategic partnerships with DINZ and the New Zealand dairy industry good for our partners? Well, as I've explained, it seems to almost be quite trendy in Korea at the moment to have a product and put Velvet in there, particularly Velvet from New Zealand. So that's a good thing. But their association with the New Zealand industry, because of what we do, helps to provide integrity to their products. We do provide assistance with a clean, green, sort of free-range type of imagery, and I know many of you here today have had various film crews and photographers and what have you out onto your farms to take, to take snapshots and build their story. And ultimately, it reduces that reputational risk that comes with food safety, traceability, and animal welfare. And it's something that we are going through as an industry, just to keep evolving our strength or strengthening our premium positioning. And what's the result? Well, we've got a new market that's been developed over the past year that now consumes 25% of our production. So about 10 years ago, we were producing about 450 tonnes. Today, that figure is closer to 700 tonnes. So much of that growth has been because of this new high-end premium sector. In South Korea, they had actually gone through quite a change over the years. So in the late 1990s, I read a report that in the late 1990s, early 2000s, their consumption had probably peaked, and it reached a trough of about 400 tonnes in the mid-2000s. There was quite an issue and quite a backlash around TCM generally in South Korea, and Velvet had reduced down to about 400 tonnes. And we didn't see any pickup over the next few years, but but we are seeing a lot of growth in this area in velvet consumption in South Korea now. So we can pretty accurately estimate that the consumption in South Korea today is about 720 tonnes, and we've seen some pretty solid growth over the past few years. And that is, as I say, a result of the advertising and promotion and energy that this healthy food sector has given to velvet in South Korea generally. And what does that mean for us in New Zealand? Well, something I'm really proud to be able to stand here in front of you and show you are our export figures. So in 2014, we were just under $30 million worth of exports. Today, that figure is just under $70 million. So we've more than doubled our exports over 5 years, and we're still heading towards increasing that market. However, the changes in the Korean market are great, but they're not limitless. Volumes will continue to increase in terms of our production. Market will reach maturity. Our competitors will catch up with our premium positioning at some point, and we will have an understandably increasing expectation by our customers. We just cannot afford complacency. So chapter 4, staying ahead of the game. Final chapter. So there are two sections here I really want to talk about. So continuing to work hard. So we have been working hard over the past few years on that premium position, but continuing that drive and also market diversification. So I see MPI's regulatory control scheme as being an important cornerstone around our premium position story. And if you don't take anything else from my presentation here at home today, please just understand that what you do on your farms around the RCS matters. It matters in the way that we regulate ourselves as an industry, but it matters in the way that we can get our premium positioning and our story across to the markets. And I've got a couple of presentation slides here of what I did when this RCS was launched late last year. I took it up to the markets, went and saw some healthy food companies based up in China and Korea and Taiwan, and they absolutely loved it. So our premium position for New Zealand velvet is naturally the best choice. And I wanted to say that the purest, safest, and healthiest deer velvet in the world just got better. But also wanted to remind them of what makes us the best. So we talked a bit about our environment, and this resonates well up in Asia, particularly where it might be a little bit more smoggier. So we're isolated, pristine, fresh air, clean water, and we really pride ourselves on the provision of safe foods. I also wanted to make sure that they understood we are the world's leaders in deer farming. We have the world's largest professionally farmed deer population. And then I covered, so these are just a couple of slides I went through, and then I covered the really high end or top level of the RCS. So dedicated freezers on all farms, dedicated clean zones, statutory declarations, and the sort of traceability and audit system as required by the RCS. As I say, that really went down well with these companies. They could really start thinking about developing stories and what have you. So that's premium positioning, onto market diversification. And I've broken this up into two subsections, channel diversification and geographic diversification. So onto channel diversification. Many of you guys may have seen an article, or a few articles that were released last year around a high-profile signing that we conducted with Korea's largest pharmaceutical company called Yuhan Pharmaceuticals. This followed about a year's work with meeting with the company, and certainly encouraging them to, again, look to invest in New Zealand velvet. This high-profile signing, what's really important is, you know how I talked about we were kind of leaders in that traditional oriented medicine sector. We've now just seen some really good growth in that healthy food sector. This provides us another limb into that, by working with a pharmaceutical company, another limb into that health functional food or pharmaceutical sector. So that's your channel diversification. This high-profile signing that we hosted in November of last year, you can see Dan there signing an MOU with the Yuhan CEO, witnessed by both the Korean ambassador and by our new Minister of Agriculture. Was great because we signed something around sort of market and marketing and what have you. But they had two other signings that day. Another one was with Ag Research, and that's particularly exciting because they committed to invest money into research in New Zealand around velvet. And the second one, and I must congratulate Hugh Signal and the other guys from Alpine here today, they signed a commercial agreement. So if you like, we completely completed, I guess, the product offering of New Zealand velvet that day. And last month, Yuhan launched their velvet product, and by all accounts, the TV advert has gone absolutely viral. I'm not going to show you a picture of the advert today, I just don't have time, but that is a picture of their new product under their brand new origin. Onto geographic diversification, and while we are working on other markets like Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, and what have you, the biggest opportunity, without a doubt, is in China. Velvet consumption is clearly increasing. China is putting a lot of focus on TCM, not just within China, but on a global stage. So both of these will mean pretty good opportunities for New Zealand velvet. But China is where Korea was about 10 or maybe even 15 years ago. So they're still right into that commodity trading type of space. So the key there is to break out and make sure we can add value to New Zealand velvet. Now, working with most of the major exporters, we all agree that the Korean model has worked well for us. We need to be copying that and doing the same in China. However, up until quite recently, Chinese companies didn't really, or lacked the confidence to invest in product development and what have you, because most of the New Zealand velvet was going up to the market as an agricultural byproduct, and they lacked clarity in terms of the way that velvet could be used and promoted in China. It needed to come up as a TCM ingredient, traditional Chinese medicine ingredient. And guess what? This new regulation that was launched last year, called the RCS, really helps us along that pathway. So now New Zealand velvet must be imported. If it's to be used for domestic consumption, it must be imported as an ingredient for TCM. And if you guys meet these regulations on farm, and we can meet them through the supply channel, we can actually meet these regulations going over to China. So it provides us that pathway. The awesome thing is, this is our first season, so the new system came into place in August of last year. This is our first season with being able to export velvet under the new system. So we've just finished our probably record exports to China, 30 million New Zealand dollars over the last 6 months, so that's October through to March. And we feel now, with no major problems going up to this market, we feel now that timing is right. So it is our job to get up there and try and improve the confidence of these influential Chinese companies to invest into branding New Zealand velvet, branding and promoting New Zealand velvet. So in my conclusion, what is keeping ahead of the game for the New Zealand velvet industry means? It means strengthening our premium positioning, so continuing to work hard in that space. And the RCS is an important tool to be able to do that. And it means diversifying markets. So it means continuing to work with our strategic partners up in the market, developing new partners in new markets. And we do believe that RCS provides us that pathway to connect with some of those Chinese companies. So I'm just going to finish with a very short story. It's probably the best thing I've heard in my 10 years in the industry. It was actually told to me by Grant down at the National Velvet Awards, overhearing a couple of farmers speaking to each other during one of the regional Velvet Awards, and one of them says, "Gee, the old what about the price of velvet this year? It's pretty good, isn't it?" A farmer goes, "Bugger the price of velvet, you should see my shed." So I reckon it's the pride that we have in our industry that helps us keep ahead of the game. Thank you very much.